I woke up to the sound of a car alarm blaring. Not just one, but a chorus of them, echoing across the lake like a symphony of chaos. Confused and still half asleep, I stumbled out of bed, pulled on my slippers and threw open the front door, only to be greeted by a sight so absurd that my brain refused to process it. My private lake, my pristine, peaceful sanctuary, was gone. In its place stood an endless sea of cars, parked haphazardly across the frozen surface. SUVs, sedans, even a massive RV sat where my boat dock used to be. Tire tracks crisscrossed the ice, and in the middle of it all, standing triumphantly with a clipboard in hand, was none other than Karen, the self-appointed queen of the neighborhood HOA. I blinked, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. What the hell is this? I shouted, stepping onto the icy mess that was once my property. Karen turned, her signature smug grin stretching across her face. Oh, good morning. We needed overflow parking for the community event this weekend. The HOA voted and your lake was the perfect location. I stared at her. You voted? I'm not even in the HOA. Karen waved a hand dismissively. That's a technicality. The lake is in the neighborhood, so it's community land. We made it official. My blood pressure skyrocketed. That's not how property works. She gave me a patronizing look, the kind you'd give a child throwing a tantrum. It's all for the greater good. Besides, you'll be compensated. I glanced at the ridiculous sight in front of me. The lake wasn't just covered in cars. It had parking meters installed. My dock had been completely dismantled, replaced with painted parking lines. There were even a few lawn chairs set up as if people planned to tailgate on my property. I took a deep breath, forcing down the urge to throw Karen and her clipboard into the freezing water. How am I supposed to get my boats out? I gestured toward the blocked-in vessels, now surrounded by minivans and sedans. Karen scoffed. Oh, don't be selfish. You weren't even using the lake in the winter. This is a much better use of the space. A slow, burning rage built in my chest. This woman had done a lot of ridiculous things before. She'd fined people for having the wrong shade of curtains, had neighbors' gardens ripped out for being too wild, and even once tried to enforce a rule about mailbox height. But this was a new level of insanity. I tried reason first. Karen, you can't just claim my property. I have the deed. This lake is mine. She rolled her eyes. Legalities, legalities. Let's not get stuck on paperwork. Think of the community. And anyway, you'll be paid in HOA credits. I blinked. HOA credits? She beamed. Yes. You can use them to pay HOA fees, attend exclusive HOA events, or even get discounts at select community-run stores. I stared at her, dead inside. Karen, I don't pay HOA fees. Not the HOA. She looked momentarily annoyed but then brightened. Oh well, maybe you'll consider joining now. We do so much for the neighborhood. I clenched my fists, my patience hanging by a thread. I want these cars gone. Now. She chuckled as if I had told a funny joke. Oh, that's not happening. We have permits. I knew she was lying, but before I could argue, a voice called out. Excuse me. Where's the valet? I turned and a couple was standing near the water's edge holding event tickets. They looked at me expectantly. I stared at them, then back at Karen, who was now directing people like some kind of parking czar. Oh, we're hosting a community winter festival this weekend, she said breezily. Food, games, a little concert. It's going to be amazing. You should come. I felt my sanity slipping. Karen, you are literally selling tickets to an event. My property. She made a face. Well, it sounds bad when you say it like that. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my temper in check. You have 1 hour to clear this mess. If these cars aren't gone by then, I will personally tow every single one. She gasped. You wouldn't dare. I took out my phone. Watch me. She cackled, arms crossed. Oh please. You can't tow an entire parking lot. I locked eyes with her. Bet. She faltered for a split second, then recovered. You'll be hearing from the HOA lawyers. I grinned. I have my own lawyer. And unlike yours, mine knows how property law works. With that, I turned and stormed back inside, already dialing the best tow company in town. They were about to have the best payday of their lives. I sat in my living room, phone pressed to my ear as I explained the situation to the biggest tow company in the county. The guy on the other end was silent for a moment before bursting into laughter. He thought I was joking. It took a few more minutes of convincing before he realized I was dead serious. A private lake turned into a parking lot by an overzealous HOA? This was a job too ridiculous to pass up. He promised to send every available truck. As soon as I hung up, I grabbed my deed and every legal document proving I owned the lake. If Karen wanted a war, I was ready to fight back with everything I had. Outside, the festival preparations were in full swing. People were unloading supplies from their trunks, setting up tables and rolling out banners. Someone had even brought in a food truck, parked right where my fishing dock used to be. Karen stood in the center of it all like a dictator surveying her kingdom, barking orders to her minions. She spotted me walking toward her and smirked. "You're just in time. We could use some help setting up the drink station," she said, completely ignoring the fact that I had spent the last hour threatening to tow every single car off my property. I held up my documents. "Karen, for the last time, this is my land. This entire festival is illegal. You have 5 minutes to shut it down before the tow trucks arrive." Her smile faltered, but only for a second. She leaned in, lowering her voice. "You really need to learn how to be a team player. This isn't just about you. The community wanted this." "The community didn't ask me," I shot back. "And that's the only vote that matters." She scoffed and turned away, waving a hand dismissively. "Do whatever you want. It's too late to stop the event now." I gritted my teeth, but I didn't need to argue anymore. The cavalry had arrived. The distant rumble of engines grew louder as a fleet of tow trucks rolled down the street like a pack of wolves hunting their prey. The sight alone was glorious. Big rigs, flatbeds, even a couple of heavy-duty wreckers. This was about to be the most efficient cleanup operation in history. The first truck pulled up right next to Karen's Lexus. A burly guy with a clipboard stepped out, giving me a nod before turning to her. "You own this vehicle, ma'am?" Karen's smugness vanished. "Excuse me." He pointed to the Lexus. "It's parked illegally. Owner or not." She clutched her pearls, sputtering. "I am the HOA president. This is a community event. You can't just tow my car." The tow truck driver shrugged. "Property owner requested it. You'll have to take it up with them." Karen spun on me, face red with rage. "You think you can do this? I will ruin you." I crossed my arms. "Karen, your Lexus is blocking access to my property. Legally, it's considered an abandoned vehicle. That means I can tow it. Just like all these other cars." She turned to the crowd, expecting backup, but the HOA members had gone suspiciously quiet. People were shifting uncomfortably, some backing away. The realization was dawning on them. Karen had promised them this festival, claimed she had the right to use my land, and now they were caught in the middle of what was quickly becoming a disaster. One by one, the tow trucks went to work. Metal hooks clamped onto wheels, hydraulic lifts hummed, and vehicles were hoisted into the air. Panicked residents rushed to stop them, but it was too late. The first cars were already gone. Someone screamed as their minivan was hauled away. Another tried to argue with the driver but was met with a firm, "Take it up with the lot owner." People scrambled to get into their cars and drive off before they could be next, but the damage was done. Karen was losing control. She tried calling the police, but I had already handled that part. The officers arrived, taking one look at the situation and immediately siding with me. I showed them the paperwork, the deed, the photos of my lake before it was turned into a parking lot. They didn't even need to hear the full story. Trespassing, property damage, unauthorized event permits. The HOA was in violation of multiple laws. Karen's smugness melted into full-blown panic as an officer informed her she could be facing legal repercussions. "This is harassment," she shrieked, trying to hold onto her Lexus as the tow truck pulled it onto the flatbed. "You can't do this to me. I am the HO." The officer sighed, clearly exhausted. "Ma'am, this property does not belong to the HOA. You have no authority here." Karen's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. The festival was in ruins. The food truck was gone, the decorations half torn down as people fled. The only ones left were the unlucky few whose cars had already been taken, now standing around helplessly as they realized they'd have to pay to get them back. But the real kicker? The moment when Karen's entire world truly fell apart? That came when one of the HOA members turned to her and said, "Wait, what about the money we paid for this?" That's when the mob turned on her. People who had blindly followed her started demanding answers. You said this was approved. You said this was funded by HOA dues. I paid extra for a VIP parking spot. Where's my refund? Karen stammered, looking around for support, but there was none. She had promised them everything and delivered nothing. Her authority crumbled in an instant. I could have walked away. I could have let her drown in her own mistakes. But I wanted one last moment of satisfaction. I leaned in, voice low enough that only she could hear. You picked the wrong person to mess with, Karen. She glared at me, eyes full of hate. But I could see the defeat creeping in. The HOA was collapsing under her, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. As the final tow truck disappeared down the road, carrying her beloved Lexus with it, I turned back toward my house, feeling lighter than I had in years. The lake was still a mess, but it was mine again. And as for the HOA, they had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. The aftermath of the great HOA disaster unfolded faster than I expected. The once proud neighborhood association that had ruled with an iron fist was now a smoldering wreck, held together by nothing more than Karen's dwindling arrogance and a few scattered supporters who were still too stunned to process what had happened. The parking lot festival was dead, the HOA's authority was shattered, and now came the fallout. Karen, despite watching her kingdom burn to the ground, still hadn't given up. She was pacing outside my house the next morning, her phone glued to her ear, barking orders at someone, probably the HOA lawyer or what was left of him. I sipped my coffee on the porch, watching her unravel like a cheap sweater. She hadn't even noticed me yet, too busy scrambling for damage control. This is all a misunderstanding, she snapped into the phone. We didn't trespass. It was a community initiative. The city will understand. Then she paused, her face paling. What do you mean the city's pressing charges? I almost felt bad for her. Almost. The reality was setting in. Not only had she orchestrated an illegal event, but the HOA had also spent a small fortune on it. They had rented equipment, put down deposits, and even hired performers for the weekend festival, none of which were going to be refunded. And now, with the event cancelled, the money was gone. Completely. To make things worse, the tow fees had fallen squarely on the shoulders of the HOA members whose cars had been taken. They were furious. I had seen some of them outside her house that morning demanding their money back. You said it was authorized, one man had shouted. I paid extra for premium lakefront parking. What does that even mean? Karen had tried to deflect, claiming it was all a temporary setback, but no one was buying it anymore. They wanted their money back and they weren't leaving without answers. And then the news broke. One of the neighbors, a quiet, tech-savvy guy who had never been a fan of Karen's reign, had taken it upon himself to do some digging. He uncovered the HOA's financial records and found something that sent shockwaves through the community. Karen had been diverting funds for months, funneling money into community improvement projects that conveniently never seemed to materialize. New landscaping? Never happened. Repairs to the clubhouse? Non-existent. All that money had gone somewhere, and now people were starting to ask where. The HOA meeting that night was a disaster of biblical proportions. The moment Karen walked into the clubhouse, she was met with a tidal wave of rage. People were yelling over each other, waving papers, demanding explanations. Where's the money, Karen? What happened to the HOA funds? Why are we being charged for your mistakes? Karen for once was at a loss. She stammered, trying to regain control. There's been a misunderstanding. The funds were allocated to necessary expenses. We just had a setback with the festival. Nobody was buying it. Someone pulled out a copy of the financial records, highlighting thousands of dollars that had disappeared under vague descriptions. Another resident stood up and announced that they had already contacted the state HOA regulatory board. An investigation was already underway. That was the moment Karen cracked. Her usual condescending smirk twisted into something desperate. She turned to her remaining supporters, expecting backup, but they were already edging away, trying to distance themselves from the sinking ship. The final blow came when the HOA treasurer, one of Karen's most loyal allies, stood up and admitted that she too had been lied to. She told us the money was accounted for, the woman said, voice shaking. But we're broke. There's nothing left. The room exploded into chaos. People were threatening lawsuits. Some were already drafting motions to have the HOA dissolved. The board members who had supported Karen were either resigning on the spot or pretending they had never been involved. And Karen? She just stood there watching her empire crumble, powerless to stop it. It didn't take long for the city to step in. Between the financial misconduct, the illegal use of my property, and the sheer number of complaints flooding in, the state HOA board had no choice but to dissolve the entire association. The HOA was officially dead. But the best part? The neighborhood's former clubhouse, once the heart of Karen's tyrannical rule, was put up for auction. And guess who bought it? That's right. With the HOA gone, I snagged it at a fraction of the price and turned it into a private fishing lodge. A beautiful irony that I enjoyed every single day. It wasn't long before the community adjusted. Without Karen breathing down their necks, people actually started enjoying their homes. No more ridiculous fines for leaving trash cans out a minute too long. No more passive-aggressive newsletters about lawn height. The air just felt lighter. And Karen? Well, her reign was over, but the punishment wasn't. Not only was she facing multiple lawsuits, but her once loyal neighbors had turned against her completely. She tried to fight back, tried to hold on to her crumbling influence, but it was too late. The final nail in the coffin came a few weeks later when I saw a moving truck outside her house. She was leaving. Forced to sell her home after the HOA collapse ruined her financially. I watched from my porch, coffee in hand, as she packed the last of her things. She caught my eye, and for a brief moment, I saw the full weight of her downfall settle on her shoulders. Then with one final glare she climbed into her car and drove off. I never saw her again. But rumor had it that she moved into an apartment complex. One with a strict HOA. Fitting.